We we think of our bodies as being all that we are. I am my body. This thinking helps us to disrespect water, air, land, one another. But water is not external from our body and ourself. Cut off your ear and you will live. Cut off your hand and you will live. Cut off your leg, you can still live. Cut off our water, we will not live more than a week. The water we drink, like the air we breathe, is not a part of our body, but is our body. And what we do to one, to the body, to the water, we do to the other. Will we remember from where we've come? The water. And once remembered, will we return to that first water? And in doing so, return to the land, to ourselves, and to each other. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you join us. And so I'm just going to pull some slides up and we will get into it. And so today, as you see, it's day 2. We have another 5 landscapes and landscape stewards coming in to present. And we'll just give you a sense of what you can expect to hear today. So we'll be starting with some context setting, bioregionalism, Regenerate Cascadia, the Landscape Hub Cultivator. Then we'll be going through and hearing from each of these 5 landscapes on the slide here. And we'll have time for dialogue and Q&A interspersed throughout, and certainly some time towards the end. And so what is the context that we're working in? At a time marked by the erosion of trust, truth, and the fragmentation of our communities and ecosystems, new approaches to governance and right livelihood are not just a preference, but a necessity. The challenges we face, from ecological degradation to social polarization, cannot be solved by the same top-down, siloed systems that created them. Everywhere we look, it is clear that people and communities are doing the work. So how do we grow relationships, trust, and the social infrastructure we need to make shared decisions, coordinate, and set priorities together, not just in one place, but across an entire bioregion? Regenerate Cascadia and these 10 landscape groups are exploring these questions through action learning grounded in these core principles: right relationship, how the land organizes us, regeneration, and bioregionalism. Now, each of these 4 principles is vast in its own right, and they each represent to us a fundamental paradigm shift, systems transformation. And so we are very much in deep inquiry about what each of these principles means as we move together in this journey. And so we're going to start our framing today by diving in and taking a closer look at bioregionalism as a founding framework. And I'll hand over to Brandon for that piece.
Yeah, thank you so much, Taya. And firstly, I also just wanted to thank everyone for taking time out of your lunch and afternoon to join us here. Before we begin, I just wanted to take a minute and introduce Cascadia and bioregionalism for people who may not be familiar with it. For those not familiar, our 10 landscape groups who will be presenting today all live. Next slide, please. Sorry. For those not familiar, our 10 landscape groups who will be presenting today all live here in the Cascadia bioregion, a region defined through the watersheds of the Fraser, Columbia, and Snake Rivers, as well as the temperate rainforest stretching along the coast. This region extends from southeast Alaska all the way to Cape Mendocino, as far east as Yellowstone, and all the way off the Pacific coast to the Cascadia subduction zone. More than that, Cascadia is an idea, a movement, and a vision going back decades, growing from many bioregional congresses and gatherings from the 1980s onward. Cascadia is rooted in an idea called bioregionalism. Bioregionalism means living within and celebrating the unique context of place. It recognizes natural boundaries and is the opposite of global monoculture and the extractive economies that we see today. More recently, this is a philosophy and set of ethics that dates back to Peter Berg and Planet Drum in the 1970s, but is also a recognition of the healthy ways that people have lived responsibly and stewarded their place for the majority of human history. Yeah, next slide. If you're not familiar with the term, this idea is built around the idea of bioregions. Bioregion simply means life place and is a holistic way of looking at the world that includes everything a species needs, not only to survive, but thrive. No matter where you live in a bioregion. And this isn't just about humans. In fact, every plant, animal, fish, and species has and lives in a bioregion. What is the bioregion of a gray whale, a salmon, or a migratory bird? If we start to think about the world in this way, we start to realize how interconnected and interdependent all of these really are. They can't be separated. And one of the critical things about bioregions is that they are real. They are not arbitrary lines on maps, and in fact, they are made up of many different layers coming together to give us a sense and definition of place. We can see them, feel them, breathe them. They are visible from space, and we are all the experts of where we live. Here in Cascadia, we start with the geology. We are a region shaped and defined by massive forces of plate tectonics jamming up against one another. These give birth to the mountains, to the Olympics, Cascades, and Rockies, all the way to the Continental Divide, and are responsible for long vertical striations and dips like rolling waves of valleys and mountains east to west. Ultimately, Cascadia is defined by the path that a drop of water takes from where it lands as it flows to the Pacific Ocean. From these hard lines, we see how energy within our region flows and is shaped. We see this with the wind. We see this with the rain, the soil, our temperature, where we grow our food. And we see it with our forests, our ecosystems, and our salmon, fish, plants, animals. And we see it how people have lived here and stored this place since time immemorial. And we see it today with how people live and how people talk to each other and how people spend their money. And we see it in how people travel. And in our sports, our music, arts, culture, and food. And from where our water and energy comes from. And so why does any of this actually matter? It matters because no matter what issue we are talking about, be it salmon, energy, food, transportation, drought, wildfire, flooding, or earthquakes, these are regional issues and no one city, state, county, country, or province will ever be able to deal with them alone. Ultimately, nature acts on the scales of watersheds and bioregions, and if we want to be serious about solving any of these issues, so must we. And so, thank you, and back over to you, Taya.
And so we now want to shift gears and tell you a little bit about Regenerate Cascadia. So you can see here we have a version of the Cascadian flag, sharing the identity of the Cascadia bioregion. And so our mission is that we exist to regenerate the Cascadia bioregion and cultivate the conditions for a regenerative movement to thrive. It's not just enough to focus on regeneration, especially for such a large bioregion. If we are going to regenerate for the next 7 generations and continue to develop the local resilience and right livelihood that we seek in our hearts, then we know that we need a cultural shift. And we need an actual movement to support this work. And so the 2 programs that we've devised and launched last year and carrying forward, the first one is called the bioregion program, and this focuses on the regenerative activities themselves. This is about forming landscape groups and developing landscape hubs to undertake critical activities such as bioregional mapping, developing portfolio-based regeneration strategies, and strengthening core capacities for deep place-based organizing that can sustain itself over the long term. And so to do that, we know we need to fund this work, not just dribs and drabs and not in isolated scenarios, but holistically. And so for that, we have our BioFi program, which is focused on generating sustainable flows of bioregional finance, helping to develop local, regional, and bioregional funding ecosystems to support the work that groups and hubs are prioritizing in their landscapes. And so that brought us, if we take a few steps back, to what was the Regenerate Cascadia Design Challenge. We knew we have to support and fund connected landscape outcomes across an entire bioregion. And that meant we needed to take a whole systems approach, which of course is how nature approaches everything. And so these 4 principles really underpin our whole systems mindset. The first one, prioritizing the central role of place-based stewardship. We know that to be in right relationship and right livelihood, that work needs to be happening on ground by the people that live in place. Number two, ensuring decisions are made by those closest to where they will have their effect. This is so important for our own participatory governance and how we collaborate. These first two principles together lift up local, unique contexts and sovereignty, whilst at the same time working to collaborate across an entire bioregion and bioregional identity. And so number three is moving at the speed of trust to build relational networks that can hold the integrity of the work over the longer time. We know that our social polarization and fractured communities makes this work hard to do. And so we look to rebuild and preserve those relationships for the onward success of the work. And finally, facilitating representation, information flow, and co-learning across the whole system by using a nested scale structure. What do we mean by nested scales? Well, when we talk about regenerating from local to global, we know we need to start with the landscape and the people in the landscapes first. And if we can do our coordination well at this level, we can also expand that out to include different ecoregions with many landscapes inside them, and then out to the full bioregion. And ultimately, we're creating a series of experiments that can lead to continent level regeneration. And so we want to take a couple of steps back right now and just give you a sense of how we kicked off with this whole systems approach and where the work began. Back to you, Brandon.
Yeah, and so just for those not familiar, Regenerate Cascadia started with a bioregional activation tour in 2023, where we partnered with the Design School for Regenerating Earth and worked with roughly 80 people in 12 landscapes, each who hosted several days of workshops, presentations, and field trips, all built around the question, how do we regenerate an entire bioregion? In all, we traveled to 12 landscapes in 31 days and met with more than 1,000 participants. This tour started in Celilo Falls, hosted by what is now the Gorge Group, who presented yesterday, and ended in Mount Vernon, hosted by what is now the Regenerate Skagit Group, who will actually be starting off our presentations today. At the close of our activation tour, Skagit elder and artist Jay Bowen left us with these words, which I wanted to share with all of you here today. Gathered before us are the most important people in the world. It may be a small group right now, but in a few short years, there's going to be a long line of people waiting to get involved in this very important movement that is overseeing the welfare of our communities. And these relationships are real. Since then, this community has been working with hundreds of people, networking, weaving, doing learning journeys, hosting events. And what's amazing is that since then, 8 of these 12 landscapes are joining us here in these presentations and as part of our first Landscape Hub Cultivator.
You'll see here we have 3 ecoregions that are represented, and we are working across the 2 nation states of Canada and the United States that the Cascadia bioregion encompasses. And so let's give you a bit more of an indication of what is a Regenerate Cascadia landscape group. We've got 5 of them here on the call. Well, first and foremost, 2 to 3 landscape stewards put their hands up and take the responsibility of holding regular meetings open to the public and coordinating group activities. Now, their job is not to come in and start new projects. They are coming in service of their landscape and the existing regeneration projects and networks that are there. So they're weaving and representing a holistic coalition of regenerative communities, organizations, and individuals from their landscape area. Very importantly, they are participants in our bioregion program, which means they get access to 501c3 services that can be difficult for groups to get. So they're able to access tax deductible donations and grants and insurance, and funding can flow to these groups easily. They also show up and participate in our monthly landscape community calls and the year-long Landscape Hub Cultivator, which is the next context setting piece we're going to be sharing with you. So what is the Hub Cultivator? It exists to create the conditions for the emergence of Cascadia landscape hubs. And so a landscape hub is simply what we think is the next level of coordination beyond a landscape group that's actually capable of coordinating multiple landscape groups within a larger ecoregion. And so you'll see here we have an illustration of what you could call the entire Regenerate Cascadia ecosystem. And so we have the Regenerate Cascadia team as the mother tree in this grove that's made up by our 10 landscape groups, and you can see all the names of the landscape stewards that are working with us today. These people represent their landscapes and hold a bridge between Regenerate Cascadia and the much larger community of over 600 members that includes regenerative groups, organizations, and businesses, all working within Cascadia around this vision. And you'll see the Landscape Hub Cultivator in the top left is represented as the sun, bringing nutrients to this mother tree and grove. And what does that specifically look like from a funding perspective? Regenerate Cascadia has been able to raise $80,000 that over the next year will be distributed directly to landscape groups for the work they're doing in the Landscape Hub Cultivator, such as this showcase. And $30,000 will be directed to landscape groups to reflow out into key projects in their community that they've identified. And so what is the LHC, as we like to call it? It is a year-long incubator and a live learning laboratory to build capacities within Regenerate Cascadia landscape groups. Together, we're exploring how to communicate, cooperate, coordinate, and collaborate across landscape scales so that we can extend that to the eco-region and the bioregional scale. It is definitely an active experiment in bioregional organizing such that we can explore bioregional finance and ultimately systems transformation. And it's a platform for developing the key components of bioregional finance within an action learning environment. So we're looking to turn theories into practice. And finally, it's a tool for promoting multi-capital value and right livelihood, which said more simply is about taking work happening in landscapes that is often invisible and undervalued and raising that up to our existing system to show its value and its visibility. And so in a nutshell, you could say that these landscape groups are all nested in place, and in each of their places, there are various projects and individuals happening, say, for instance, across the whole length of a watershed. The landscape groups are coming in service to these projects to connect them into a collaboration infrastructure such that we can develop a connected portfolio approach and therefore flow funding more easily to the entire landscape rather than competition between separate groups. And so the core components of the curriculum of the LHC, you could say, the pathway through, we're starting in the bottom right-hand corner with the landscape stories and the showcase that today is all about, making the work visible from the very beginning. Then we'll bob over to the left and we'll start our bioregional mapping and uncovering story of place. This is an activity where these landscape groups will be going very wide and pulling in as many different perspectives and people and organizations from their landscape to truly develop the story of place that Brandon was alluding to around bioregionalism. What are all the layers and what is the larger story that each person can find themselves within so that we all have that sense of landscape identity? Out of that bioregional mapping will emerge an initial portfolio of regenerative projects that we can begin to experiment flowing funding to. And those projects will be nested within an initial landscape strategy and budget so that we're starting to coordinate these activities and finance flows. We'll also be focusing on core team development. What does it take from a skill and a resource perspective to be responsible for coordinating across a larger area? And most importantly, how is the community identifying those elements that we will measure, report, and verify against to demonstrate what health equals in this landscape? Not coming from a top-down carbon market trading perspective, but from the people living in the landscape who know what health and vitality looks like. And so this is rolling out in a three-phased approach. We are at the end of phase one, which was around preparing the foundations and bringing this work out to the wider community. Phase two will kick off in March with our in-person bioregional mapping workshops. Phase three will kick off in the second half of the year, moving into experimenting with flowing funding to projects and focusing on team development. And at each of these phases, there are key outputs and there are funding amounts being distributed to landscape groups and projects. And so finally, how are we actually achieving this? Quite in a quite lean fashion. So far, it's working very well. We have an online community of practice that we gather in on a Mighty Network platform where we have communication, coordination, and shared resources, also able to support each other. We use our phases to feature a key action learning project and output, and then that becomes the focus. We use monthly content sessions to move through that action learning project, weekly classroom sessions to give time for groups to do the work together and to coach and learn together. And finally, we have weekly landscape office hours, a support mechanism for groups to drop in and have any particular specific needs answered and supported. And so that brings us to the reason we are here today, which is our day two of the Landscape Showcase. You'll be hearing from Skagit River Valley, from Whatcom, from South Willamette Valley, from Vashon Island and Mt Olympus. And so we're going to be starting with Skagit River Valley, which you can see up here in the orange on the Salish Sea. We invite those presenters to raise their virtual hands. You'll be spotlighted. Please unmute yourself and let me know when you're ready, and we'll kick off the first slide. Claire, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, before we get going, I just wanted to say, I don't know that we introduced ourselves.
Oh, we didn't.
And maybe I'll hand that over to you, but I just wanted us to set that context there too. Right.
Oh, thank you so much, Claire. It really does take a team and we have each other's backs. So my apologies for not introducing myself and some of the people on this call. So Brandon and Claire, who you've all heard from today, are the initiators, the co-conspirators who cooked up the vision of Regenerate Cascadia with the hundreds of people during the activation tour. My name is Taya. I'm the Landscape Hub Cultivator Program Manager, and you are going to hear from many of our landscape stewards today who will introduce themselves as they're moving through the presentation. And there is one more piece we wanted to share in terms of being real with you. Life continues regardless of what plans we have made. And over the course of the last week, Claire's mother went into her death process, which meant our preparation had to absorb the reality of this really important transitional moment. And in what we can only call an act of beauty, Claire's mother passed on midnight, the night before day one of the showcase. This work was so important to her. It was the first thing she would ask Claire about when Claire visited. And so we just wanted to honor that that process has been happening and honor that Claire has been able to be present and enthused and invigorated by these presentations. So thank you for that. And so now we'll head back to Skagit River Valley. Unmute yourself and let me know when you'd like your first slide up.
We're ready. We're ready. Hello, everybody. I'm Cindy, and I am so honored to be here. My heart is full today with the beauty of the place that we live and the fact that a dream of mine long kept is coming to fruition through this Regenerate Cascadia movement. I've been a landscape steward for years because I worked for the National Park and Forest Service over the last 45 years and worked here in the Skagit ecosystem doing a variety of different things from up at the headwaters of the Skagit River for the parks and forests and as a community member, and during the times when we were teaching mountain school and working with the community in lots of different ways. I've held this for many, many years, and I want to share my love of this place with all of you and the beauty of the Skagit watershed. Next. The Skagit watershed is the largest river and stream complex feeding into what was once called the Puget Sound here in this area, now the Salish Sea. It covers almost 1.7 million acres. The riverway itself, 162 miles long, beginning in Canada and up in the snow-capped peaks of the mountains. It also supports all the many species of salmon. There are so many organizations, friends, and people who care about this place. And so many of us are beginning to think we need to work together to keep this for the next 7 generations. Next slide. It is from the indigenous people of the Skagit Valley that we get the name Skagit. the Lushootseed word meaning a place of refuge. Even today, many people come here seeking refuge, finding it in the verdant valley, finding it in the wilderness and the lands, or starting their own little family farms, or being a part of the community in many different ways. We're honoring the foods and the relationship of the people who came here many, many years before we did, and honor the things that they've done. And we continue that in our groups and our working with indigenous plants, our working with old growth forests, and the foods that the natives have passed our way. And thank you, Brandon, for sharing Joe Bowen's wonderful quote at the beginning of this session today. Next slide. It's from the bioregional scale that we can align our human relationships with systems of air, water, and place, all of us together. We attune to the land and the people of our communities, deepening the relationships, allowing for belonging and emerging stewardship in collaboration. Next, Danielle.
So we want to listen to the river. And the way that we do that is by paying attention. Where are you now in the place that you're in? Where's north, east, south, west? Where does the sun rise and fall? You can ask, am I a person that lives with a river? The flooding here, we have forces us to maintain direct connection to the land and the river systems.
Next.
We have to pay attention to the great course changes of the Skagit River. We can't ignore it. Because I live in the floodplain, these are things that I'm acutely aware of. When the floods come in, which side of the river do I want to be on? I have to have situational awareness, safety. I have to know where is safe drinking water, electricity, heat. I have to watch out for mudslides. In this last flood, we evacuated 80,000 people from the 2 cities nearby, Mount Vernon, nearby where I live. And I think it's important that we fund flood education, preparation, and response while at the same time building community. I'm also interested in creating a walking bridge. It's important to pay attention to how local systems actually function, super local, and stopping to see what's really right in front of you. And it's important that we facilitate spaces that enable mutual support. Next, and Genevieve.
Regenerate Skagit began in the spring of 2025. Next. We started with a weekly potluck. We meet every week. We slow down. We listen. We ask, how are you noticing the change in the season? What felt like success this week? Was there any small thing you needed more support with this week? As we saw each other, needs emerged. It felt simple to meet them. This kind of human-to-human support is the heart of what we hope to nourish through Regenerate Skagit. Next, go ahead, Shapit.
So from our potlucks, a shared set of values began to emerge. Next. At the foundation of all of them was attunement, the practice of paying attention to one another and to the place. We've learned that strong relationships don't come after the work. They actually are the work. So rather than optimizing for project outcomes alone, we've chose to put relationships first. And as we've talked and worked together, another pattern became clear. Many of the systems that we live inside have grown so large that no one can really see or understand how they function. Excuse me. They're abstract, distant, and hard to feel connected to. A human-scale food system looks very different. It's closer to farm to table, something you can see, feel, and participate in directly. Much like Brandon pointed out earlier, we try to move at the speed of trust. And trust doesn't actually come from plans or platforms alone. It's built by showing up, working together, and staying in relationship over time. That leads to another core value of ours, reciprocity. We value shared work that meets the needs of the land, the people doing the work, and the wider community. If you show up to help to harvest garlic, you might just take home a box of garlic with you. The exchange is tangible, mutual, and grounded. Next.
Our vision, a vision of bioregional culture rooted in the Skagit Valley watershed, where humans live in relationship by attuning with land, water, and each other. We listen deeply, imagining together and remembering that we are of the land that sustains us.
Our mission is to cultivate bioregional awareness and belonging by inviting people of all ages to see, feel, and imagine life from the perspectives of the watershed, its rivers, trees, animals, farms, and communities. We do this through the practice of deep listening, shared art making, embodied conversation, and collective attunement to the land and to one another. Next. Go ahead, John.
Who we are at Regenerate Skagit. Our group is mostly made up of small-scale farmers living close to the land. I'm Genevieve Cadigan, and I'm the co-founder of Revillage Society, and I love creating gatherings that cultivate connection and belonging. Danielle?
I'm Danielle. I'm co-founder of Highwater Farm and Fields of Recovery. Cindy?
I'm Cindy, grandmother visionary landscape steward at Childs Creek Farm. Now that I've retired from other things, I consider myself a community conservationist, a permaculturist. I have eco gardens that are still developing. I love to give naturalist tours. I've been a part of the Master Gardeners since 2016. Creative arts and holistic wellness have become major implications in my life over the last 10 years.
And I'm the tech steward for Regenerate Skagit and the co-founder of Revillage Society. Next. And Cindy, would you tell us a bit about Childs Creek Farm?
Farm developed as a family farm way back over 40 years ago. And we had all kinds of different animals, started with sheep. But because both my husband and myself were also working for the National Park Service, it became something that we morphed over time. And over time, we realized that there was flooding happening down below and in the wetlands below us where the alluvial fans came down, and the conservation needed to become an important part of what was happening. So we started the first conservation reserve enhancement project in Skagit County, which is still one that is bringing back the coho salmon into the watershed, and also doing all those other things that I talked about, and welcoming visitors and people for healing and other opportunities, kind of as a little open center of regeneration.
Yeah, so, and
Danielle?
Yeah, so we did Highwater Farm for about 15 years here before we started moving into Fields of Recovery, where Highwater Farm grew food, seed, and medicine for wholesale markets. And now we have other farmers growing on the property, and more rotational grazing, perennial planting. The climate here is great. The soil is amazing, but we have the flooding, so it's a benefit and a drawback. Chapit?
I'm gonna.
Yeah, Shandia.
I have Village Society is a community building organization that facilitates small group connection. Next. Oh, okay. We have a lot of ideas for 2026. Next. We are full of enthusiasm to create, learn, and explore in the Skagit Valley. Our first project is to create with a bioregional imagination at the farmers market. Next. We'll make art together using handmade stamps of local plants, animals, and landforms, imagining how we want to live here. We will collect stories of this place. Next. We will have monthly community conversations exploring what it means to live here, our experience of this place, how we care for it, and how it shapes our well-being. Come listen, reflect, and contribute. Your voice is part of the Skagit story. Next. This is Cindy.
These are about to begin this spring again, and we've had many kinds of learning journeys at the Childs Creek Farm, where we observe the change, where we observe how things are transformed and how arts and ecology gardens from a small farm, we have an arts and ecology garden. We have so much biodiversity, including native plants and every kind of herb and fruit and vegetable you can imagine. Hardy kiwis, all kinds of great things growing at Childs Creek Farm. In our past, we've engaged people in these kinds of learning journeys, and now through various other programs, we'll be opening the place to show and to explore regeneration and living a regenerative life with others this spring.
Next. And then finally not quite finally, but mapping our bioregion, rivers, forests, farms, and towns. This place is alive. The stories flow here from the first peoples to those tending it today. And we invite you to look, listen, and share and build a living map of our watershed together. Next.
Project Heron is a personal project of mine that is a web-based application and database designed to support a bioregional landscape. At its core, it helps us answer some of the practical questions. Who's participating? What skills are in the region? What do people and organizations have to offer, and where do they need help? Rather than building everything all at once, I've been taking a very regenerative approach and just building things as the needs arise. I'm looking for help here. If anybody's interested in actually helping, learning something new, and building together, I would love that. Next, we've got some emerging projects that are coming up, and we're looking forward to. We'll be hosting community conversations to build interest for the walking bridge that Danielle spoke about. We're also beginning to explore housing and land use agreements that can connect farms with people who want to live and work on the land. And we're just starting to explore what non-hierarchical leadership looks like in practice. Next. So how can you get involved? We'd love to have you come out and join one of our monthly gatherings. We want to hear what you have to say. Stay connected by joining our mailing list, checking out our website, and just go out and see, feel, and act in the landscape. Next. And as Genevieve pointed out, at our potlucks, questions have been a very important part of that. And so I want to leave you with this question. How might you live with this place? Thank you very much. And if any of this resonated with you, please reach out and contact us.
Thank you so much to our 4 landscape stewards from Skagit River Valley for kicking us off and setting the tone for day 2 of our showcase. It's just delightful to hear your story. And so now we are going to hear from a neighboring landscape, Whatcom, just around the corner. And so I ask Whatcom land stewards to raise your virtual hand so that we can spotlight you, to unmute yourself if you're about to present, and then just let me know when you'd like your first slide.
I think we're ready to go with slide 64. Okay, shall we slide right into it?
Yes, take it
Everybody
away.
can hear me, correct? And
Yep,
I'll be
you're
the first speaker. Thank you. So thank you, Taya, and hello, everyone. My name's Dave. Really appreciate and feel honored that you're with us today. To start, we'd like to acknowledge that we're settlers on the traditional lands of the Lummi Nation and the Nooksack tribe, and that we deeply appreciate their caring stewardship of it. And again, my name is Dave, and along with my colleagues Corey, Brian, and David, we're excited to share some of the unique characteristics of our landscape and of its inhabitants and how they inspire and organize our work. Next. Our landscape is located in northwest Washington state between the Fraser and Skagit River Valleys and the Salish Sea. It's a landscape rich in fertile soils, abundant forests, rich biodiversity, caring people, and much more. And it's all of these characteristics together that make the landscape an ideal place to give birth to a bioregionalism movement. That said, our boundaries have yet to be clearly defined, and they may well overlap with our neighboring landscapes. More so, we may choose to define our boundaries more like ecotones that are often broad or change with the seasons. And the geographic feature, though, that defines our landscape is the Nooksack River Basin, shown here with the orange and red lines, along with a number of other boundaries. And we'll be considering all of these boundaries and others when we more clearly define the boundaries of our landscape. Next. Though it may change over time, we're currently referring to our landscape as the Whatcom landscape, not to be confused with Whatcom County. The word Whatcom itself is derived from the Coast Salish name for the lower falls in Whatcom Creek in Bellingham, and it translates as noisy rumbling waters. So we're the land of noisy rumbling waters. Next. Between the depths of Bellingham Bay and the top of Mount Baker or Colmacolshan, we're blessed with a variety of interconnected ecosystems, many of which are tied together by the Nooksack River system and by all 5 salmon species that migrate up and down it. In spite of substantial alterations to the landscape over time, our region remains an area with significant biodiversity, with nearly 500 species of vertebrates and 1,100 species of plants, and with 35 general habitat types. Next. These totemic species are key to the health and well-being of our landscape, and they contribute to our sense of connection to it. Thus, they motivate us to regenerate the damaged ecosystems that they all depend on. Next. We're also blessed with a relatively mild climate, with warm, dry summers and cool, wet winters, and abundant, though highly seasonal rainfall, and a growing season 150 days in length, but increasing due to climate change. And in addition, the ecosystems in our landscape, when fully functioning, yield a wealth of vital ecosystem services that both nature and humans depend on, and which we will be collaborating with others to regenerate over time. Next slide. As we've mentioned, we're fortunate that both the Nooksack tribe and the Lummi Nation call our landscape their home. Both have lived in right and respectful relationship with this land since time immemorial and are carrying out significant restoration projects on the Nooksack River. We're inspired by how they live in reciprocity with the land, and we look forward to building lasting and mutually beneficial relationships with them. And next. In addition to our Indigenous neighbors, there's over 230,000 non-Indigenous peoples that also inhabit our landscape. They include groups like all of those listed here and many more, plus a diversity of cultures and ethnic groups from around the globe. And in spite of this diversity, though, one thing many of us share is a love of this place and a commitment to work together to protect and regenerate it. And I'll pass to Brian.
Thanks, Dave. That was great. So, living in place, learning from patterns and cyclical rhythms is critically important. My personal 50 plus years of living here in the Pacific Northwest, and most of that time here in Whatcom County, I've had a learned experience that comes from living with the land, making observations, acting with intention and reciprocity. Next. The Nooksack River system is our main organizing feature. The three main branches you see here flow from on and around Mount Baker and surrounding peaks and include a vast area. The rich, fertile soils around that area are utilized, habitat, and sparse regional settlements. It flows down to the delta between the Lummi Nation Peninsula there and Bellingham City on Bellingham Bay. Bordering Canada is an important feature. We're located between Seattle and Vancouver. We're connected to Canada by weather, water, economies, and culture. The Fraser River Valley winds and weather and smoke sometimes come down and connect and flow through the county. Water economies and culture and the Salish Sea and fish and flows also connect us with our neighbors to the north. Next. We have a lot of challenging issues locally, from climate change that affects floods, droughts, and increasing population influx, driving property and other resource prices up. Additionally, there's forest management practices that are contentious, as well as a port development issue that's become a bigger concern on critical water areas. Currently, there's a divisive water adjudication process pitting residents, farms, and fisheries against each other over water rights. Next. But we feel hopeful. By connecting organizations and people through educational events, we can build a resilient network. Working with numerous farmers and private land stewards to form right relationships with the land and water, promoting regenerative farming processes and philosophies that last, and most importantly, cultivating a mindset that leads towards creating a lasting communal regenerative culture that carries on into the future. And I will pass it off to David.
Thank you, Brian. In October 2023, Dave, Brian, and myself worked together to organize a local event as part of the Cascadia Bioregional Activation Tour. This was the birth of what we're now calling Regenerate Whatcom, next. We did this via the Transition Whatcom and Sustainable Bellingham groups that Brian and I have both been involved with since the early 2000s. For the activation tour, we enlisted co-sponsorship and active participation with a total of 9 different local organizations. Next. In 2025, we began organizing a series of public events that we called Walking Whatcom Waters, where we've engaged 5 different local organizations. We've also co-hosted with Whatcom Permaculture a series of meetups, meeting at various homes and public sites engaged with permaculture practices and practitioners. As this illustration shows, we're grounded in the deep historical roots created by established organizations in our community. And it is through those relationships that our core values are lived. And we aim to deepen our connections to a diverse variety of community allies, with just a few examples given here, the potential allies that are our growing tips. Next. Regarding our vision and mission, we emphasize the need to build bridges of mutual integration and functional interdependency from one bioregion to the next, from one organization to the next, and from one neighbor to the next, as we collectively navigate the chaotic transition that's currently underway. In my previous work with Transition Whatcom, we learned early the importance of how to work well with other groups, and we held the concept of being a crazy quilt, where irregular pieces are stitched into a practical and attractive whole. Next. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. This old proverb tells us why it is important to work together. Relationships matter. especially when working at the bioregional level, where the feedback loops and response time can be much shorter and more responsive by living stewards on the land. We also believe it is important to maintain a living systems view that sees the whole of our bioregion and understands how the various parts fit into that whole and how the whole can support the parts. Regeneration, after all, is what living systems do as they work to balance and integrate the dynamic patterns in their environment in order to maintain coherence and to thrive. Next. Why do these relationships matter? They matter because they can be what catalyzes, inspires, and supports actions that make things happen. In the image on the left, you can see the 9 organizations that helped us make the activation tour a success. One of those organizations was Colshan Carbon Trust, and last summer they invited us to participate in a Climate Action Week event that they organized called Rooted in Resilience, the picture on the right. So, the recycle of reciprocity in action. We are part of a mycelium network, where the fungus that runs through a network of forest soils feed and support a variety of plants and trees from below. Now over to Corey.
All right, so I'm going to talk about our landscape group. You can move to the next slide. Here I want to talk about how we're striving to be as a group of stewards and be as we go about the work. These are our guiding principles, which we take to heart. We believe that changing the culture, starting with ourselves and our team, is necessary to prepare fertile ground for regeneration. So we do our best to practice in all our meetings, gatherings, and events that we either hold or that we go to. Together, we're learning to navigate our team landscape, which is full of passions and shared passions and joys, but also differences and conflicts at times. On good days, these are kind of easy to do, and on other days, it takes open hearts, commitment, and integrity to create our path forward. So it starts with listening and learning from nature, being humble, creating space for emergence, which means willingness to let go of things that have worked well for us over a long period of time, but maybe don't support our values, let go of our egos, creating space for what we don't yet see or don't yet know, creating space for new relationships and new ways forward, slowing down so trust and community can build. And this was the hardest thing in 2025 because we felt we are accountable to our community, and we were focusing on our own team and didn't have as many things for people to engage as we wanted to, but we took our time. And then we're really clear that partnering among many diverse groups is a necessary ingredient for moving forward. Next slide. So here's our group. We see ourselves as initial stewards of Regenerate Whatcom, and are confident more will come. We know more need to come. I'm Corey Seven, and I'm the new person to the landscape, having moved from Colorado 3 years ago. Besides a deep passion for this work, I bring a background in leading whole systems innovation and improvement in healthcare, along with experience in managing big projects and frontline systems change. And Brian.
Yeah, I'm Brian Kirkfleet, and I'm a co-steward at Inspiration Farm, which is a permaculture-based demonstration farm, educational farm, North County. And through my time here, it has led to incubators of a lot of different projects, including the Sailor Seed Swap, the Whatcom Permaculture Group, and I'm also an artist involved in Whatcom Artist Studio Tour. And I'll pass it off to David.
I'm David McLeod. I consider myself a social permaculturist, and I have 4 certifications in quality management systems. I'm a teacher of a pattern language called Pattern Dynamics. I've initiated a city and county task force on energy resource scarcity, and co-initiator of Transition Whatcom and Sustainable Bellingham. I'm a lifetime Bellingham resident, a musician who works part-time for the Whatcom Environmental Council. And over to Dave Ketter.
You're on mute, Dave.
Thank you, Corey. So like many of us here, I'm a lifelong lover of nature, and this grew into my becoming a student and practitioner of environmental science and deep ecology and ecopsychology, contemplative environmental leadership, and integral theory and practice. I'm also a junkie of startup organizations like this one, having been a co-founding member of several of them. So, and back to Corey.
Great. Next slide, please. So, although some of us have deep roots here, there are ways our team is new, and 2025 was a year of forming for our team. We did this by meeting regularly and holding meetups and events. These meetups and events were our medium, so to speak, to learn about each other, form relationships with community members who came. We have built a strong foundation and are ready for the next steps. Brandon, Claire, and Taya posed a question: why should people trust us? And that guides these words. We are 4 people who've lived a lot of years, gained many skills and experiences to bring to the work. Each of us, in our own ways, has led grassroots change for many years. I think people can trust our commitment to our ways of being, our skills in leading change and organizing, and our long-term commitment to learning a way forward. Next slide. So what are we up to next? Next slide. In 2025, monthly gatherings were our drumbeat and will continue in 2026. It's our main way to regularly connect with community who are engaged or wish to be. These gatherings ground us in the land. We bring a blend of education, paradigm-shifting content, and the special magic when gathering to learn from the land, sitting together for a potluck and discussion. Next slide. Our focus now is on deepening connections through bioregional learning events, meetups, work parties, and a strong focus on partnering and networking. We're ready to build a strong strategy and collaboration with community. We're really excited about the bioregional mapping process as a part of the Cultivator program and holding strategy sessions to build that portfolio of projects you heard about. And then not most importantly, but importantly, we will be creating the organizational structure to be able to connect and support frontline work, so much that's already happening in our area. This includes administrative, communication, and strong financial processes. We plan on building the capacities to be able to flow funding to projects. Next slide. And we have a couple of things coming up tomorrow. Come join us up in Bellingham at the Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship, the Salish Sweet Seed Swap hosted by the Salish Seed Guild from 12 to 3. We'll all be up there. And then February 12th, Thursday, February 12th, we're holding a Zoom gathering after this showcase event. And for anyone who wants to come, bring your favorite cider, beer, or tea, and we're going to talk. So yeah. We're excited about those. And next slide. So yeah, please stay in contact with us. Sign up for our mailing list, which is the best way to stay up to date with what's happening. And with spring right around the corner, the meetups on the land will begin again. You can sign up at our website at regeneratewhatcom.org and email us. We welcome all ideas, all input, all inquiries. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey.
And thank you. Thank you so much to the 4 landscape stewards holding space in Whatcom Valley. We're going to take just a little bit of a break. We've had 2 incredible presentations. You can see all the icons flying through. Let's just look at each other's faces. You can take a deep breath. You can have a bit of a stretch. We'll open up for maybe a question or 2, and if you need a bio break, you want to go refill your cup of tea or get some water, we'll start back up again at 5 past, so you don't miss the next group, which is South Willamette Valley. But for now, are there any questions coming up in the chat Claire or Brandon would like to respond to, or anyone who would like to ask a question live? You can raise your virtual hand. And I see Susan with her real hand raised. So Susan, you can unmute yourself and pop in.
Thank you. Maybe David McLeod with Whatcom or any of you could answer. I'm wondering, has the traditional funding for these environmental concerns been informed by political regions and transactional economies? And how will we make the shift?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, there are political concerns and ways that funders have given to organizations that then influence the way that they operate politically based on who their funders are. There's all sorts of concerns like that, which is one reason why in Regenerate Cascadia we are leaning into what we're calling BioFi, where funding flows to different organizations such as potentially ours, and that then we then can flow that funding to the specific projects that we think are worthy. I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Excellent. So through grants and your allies that you had listed so beautifully, and potential allies, there's funding there you're finding already. Fantastic.
To be honest, we have very little funding. We're mostly volunteer driven, and we're providing a pathway for funding to start to flow.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think
Oh, you go, Claire.
one of the things that we also are finding is that when you shift how we take authority, when authority comes from the land, it becomes the common reality that bridges political divides because it is a shared reality. And that actually is really potent and powerful in terms of an attractor for funding that feels like it can actually be effective rather than, dividing.
If I may add one little piece too. There are already some significant organizations in our landscape that do collaborate together and share costs of major restoration projects, particularly on the Nooksack. So the Conservation District, the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association, and the Land Trust all work closely together with each other to regenerate the earth. So we'll be tapping into that as well.
And so I'll ask the South Willamette Valley landscape stewards to raise your virtual hands so we could get you spotlighted and ready to present. And just to say, in follow-up to that little bit of dialogue that was starting to emerge, really that's what the Landscape Hub Cultivator is here to do, starting with this showcase. How do we continue to amplify the work that we're doing and to demonstrate that we can do more with current funding flows and we can reduce risk for systemic and impact investing and therefore bring more funding to the space. And so I'm going to pull the slides up and welcome the South Willamette Valley Landscape Stewards. Just make sure you're unmuted when you're ready to speak. We'll lower your virtual hands and just let me know when you'd like your first slide up.
Thank you, Taya. Yeah, we can go ahead and begin. Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon from the South Willamette Valley. I am
Excuse me,
very
Kelson. The slide is not full screen.
Yeah, it is, but
Yeah.
maybe you not.
It is on my end.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
All good, all good.
wonderful. Yeah, I'm extremely honored today to present here the project we've been working on in South Willamette Valley and our beautiful landscape here. My name's Elson. I'm a local land steward, community organized farmer here in the South Willamette Valley. And I live with Lost Valley Education Center, one of our core anchor institutions. And I'm going to hand it off to Claire to introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm Claire Strawn. I live in Eugene. And Kelson, you remember you're going to turn off your visual when you talk. So I have been doing kind of politically social economy community work for 50 some years. And I see myself as a social sculptor connecting the dots. I'll pass it off to Kendall.
Hi, I'm Kendall Runyon. I'm also at Lost Valley Education Center. I'm the program steward here. Also today joining us in the presentation is Drew. Drew, would you like to introduce yourself really quick?
Howdy, y'all. I'm Drew Thomas with the Center for Rural Livelihoods. I'm a shepherd, educator, and community organizer down in Cottage Grove.
Wonderful. Without further ado, we'll go to the next slide. And I'll be keeping my video off just to get the connection here. But we want to first start with our story of place. And really what we're talking about here is shifting our story of place, how we relate to these places, have healthy relationships with those places and the people who live there. And we kind of want to center a message in the beginning that you'll hear throughout, that any amount of landscape regeneration, soil, forest, water conservation efforts will be temporary if the extractive economy is not shifted to an economy based on that of the well-being of all life in our landscape. So how do we shift these stories? So let's start with the story of Valley. Next slide. Up the South Willamette Valley. We're located here at the 4 or 5 tributaries that flow in just around Eugene. And the South Willamette Valley is located between the coast and Cascade mountain ranges. It was shaped by floods, the Missoula floods, over 14,000 years ago. And this valley has also been shaped by the many cultures who have settled here, but primarily the cultures who have lived here from time immemorial, the Kalapuya and other First Nations. And within the story of the South Willamette Valley, we see beautiful landscapes of fertile soil, home of deep verdant forests, clean, abundant water sources, underground aquifers locked within the Cascades. But we also see a story of much of this landscape ravaged by extractive timber and industrial agriculture. And many of the first foods of the Kalapuya, Wapato, and Camas that were tended in wetlands, which were drained and tended by cultural fiber, which was removed from the landscape. So we want to highlight the stories that have potential to return us or serve this landscape in a way that it can be an ecological refuge in our current climatic situation. Slide. So how the land organizes us. Just a piece on this photo here. This was taken at the headwaters of the Mackenzie tributary river, where we held a ceremony to discuss our ancestors' impact on these lands and to listen to how we may be of service to the waters that flow through them. Over to Claire.
So, how the land has shaped us, and we have to say rivers and fire and water are the forces that have really shaped the communities of all species here. But we envision in the future a future where the Willamette Valley has rivers that are alive with salmon and beaver, where we partner with fire as a life-giving cycle. Old growth forests stand alongside human systems centered in care, reciprocity, and life over profit and extraction. And the people of this land live in deep, enduring relationships with landscapes that hold them. So wildfires are one of our calls to action. Kelson mentioned the industrial agriculture. We're the grass seed capital of, I don't know, the world or Oregon or what, because the small farms have been bought out by agricultural, corporate agriculture. So monoculture, timber industries, and grass seed have destroyed habitats, increased wildfire dangers, benefit outside investors instead of the local community. And we're calling for an adoption of traditional ways of stewarding the forest and learning from indigenous knowledge and teaching future generations. So part of that, 90% of our food in this area comes down the I-5 corridor, even though we have the capacity to feed just about meet all of the needs of this area from local farms, or could have the capacity. So, and also these industries use toxic chemicals, aerial spraying, and what have you, that poison the rivers and the land. So those are some of our challenges. Those of us working on this have converged from a lot of different paths. We have people working on food sovereignty and soil restoration, concern for climate and planet boundary overshoot, and social economic collapse, systemic poverty, housing insecurity, rural economic destitution, and political divides. But what we know is that the bioregional land-based stuff has the potential to cross the social divides, because we're talking about the needs of our human and all our relations. Next. So we focus a lot on regenerative economics, noting that we're rooted in natural abundance, that our job is to restore the regenerative ecosystems by replacing extractive economies with circular economic systems, and that we have a responsibility to build continuity into future generations by building the leadership and the hands-on skill sets that are needed to continue with regenerative economics. And, as Kelson said, all of our work on the land will be temporary unless we do this systemic shift from the extractive economy to the well-being of all life.
Yeah.
Next, go ahead. Next.
So, when discussing how people of this land can collectively organize economic structures that respect each other and the land, we are speaking about moving at the speed of relationships. And so let's first start with the living people and organizations who are at the forefront of this work, weaving interconnected networks of care across this valley. Yeah. So some of these organizations which form the anchor institutions on our team are the Center for Rural Livelihoods, which we'll refer to as CRL, which was founded in 1976, the Lost Valley Education Center, founded in 1989, and the Prout Institute, which was founded in 1995. And these organizations have been doing much of this regenerative work in the landscape, but only recently came together as a team with the Regenerate Cascadia after the Joe Brewer tour around 3 years ago. Next.
So we are a group of over 15 individuals, comprised mainly of representatives from the previously mentioned anchor institutions, and we use a method called sociocracy to organize, with a biweekly steering committee guiding our shared direction and several working circles focused on specific areas of work. As a group, we've chosen a sector-based approach to building a regional portfolio of projects. Food was one of our first focuses, reflecting the strong agricultural presence in our network. And we're also supporting the revival of Northwest Eco Builders Guild to represent housing and building needs. While partners at Center for Rural Livelihoods are advancing an integrated economic strategy in Cottage Grove, which we'll be highlighting soon in the presentation. In the coming year, we plan to launch an education and finance circle to support our 2026 goals. And in 2025, one of our biggest projects was a listening tour in collaboration with partners from the North Willamette Valley. Next.
Yeah, so this listening tour was a huge project that our team put together. It took us 9 months with a couple dozen different organizers, and we put together a 2-week tour across the Willamette Valley, listening to over 23 different groups, organizations. We raised about $10,000 and led 10 different community-led events. And we were connecting with education centers, farms, faith centers, restoration projects, just to hear what their challenges in the landscapes were, and to connect all these folks doing the regenerative work, already doing this work, into a larger network that can help build something greater out here in the Willamette Valley. And so this also led to some next steps, some things that we really want to pursue, some tangible focuses in the years to come.
Next. Yeah. So, yeah, we discovered that while the food sector is very active here, they've got it going on. There's not a lot of value add that we felt we could contribute because we're already contributing in that area. So we wanted to focus down on two things to build portfolio projects that we think will build local capacity and provide models for regenerative economies elsewhere. So the first one is a circle led out of Cottage Grove, and in a minute Drew will tell you more about it. They're building on 50 years of organizing in that community of about 15,000, I think. And the idea is to build a cooperative infrastructure for management of natural resources and food abundance, and building culturally across urban and rural economies. The second one is networking together the educators. All three of our anchor institutions are educational institutions. Many of the farms focus on education, and we want to network the educational capacity of this ecoregion to build the skills and the leadership of our future regenerators. Next.
Great. So I'd like to kick off and talk more about what's going on down in Cottage Grove. I think this slide shows that there's quite a bit to talk about. Cottage Grove, as you saw on that earlier map from Kelson, is located on the Coast Fork branch of the Willamette, one of the many headwaters there. We're about 25 miles south of Eugene, and the town itself is about 10,000 people with the greater Cottage Grove area. A lot of us living outside of city limits. But here, our integrated development is focusing on 3 more anchor institutions. What we have here is, these are all grassroots organizations that are deeply rooted in this place. The one KCPA up there, this is the Comema Cultural Protection Association. This is an organization that of culture keepers, of Kalapuya folks who hold traditional songs, traditional ecological knowledge, stories, and have been keeping the culture going in this modern era with through culture camps, through integration with the schools, and various projects, and have recently, in the last few years, have landed on a land base within their ancestral homelands that they're stewarding. It's these sorts of it's many of these programs that helped inspire people who went on to start the Center for Livelihoods in this area over 50 years ago. You know, there was the Hodad's Tree Planting Cooperative. There was the Cerro Gordo Village Project going on. There was ongoing cultural revitalization and language happening. And the Center for Livelihoods landed on a 40-acre piece of land. At that time, it was Aprovecho. And from there, many projects have been born over the years, multiple businesses, multiple community projects, and about 2 generations of folks who have landed and rooted within various land bases throughout Cottage Grove. some of those folks have come together to form the Twinberry Commons, which birthed out of a public assembly that was here when our local farm stand was being evicted. This project holds both a burgeoning food co-op as well as a number of small food businesses under there. It's working on business incubation and providing a marketplace for many of these projects. So you can see, while these three institutions are in and of themselves, they're touching on so many other projects within this small community. Next slide, please. So what we have here is a plan. We have stage one, which is focusing on bolstering these three institutions. What they need in order to do this long-term integrated visioning is confidence in the places that they're at and dedicated staff to keep going. You know, we all get sucked into these grant cycles and that everybody's so familiar with, right? So we have plans to add full-time staff members to each of these organizations, as well as bolstering their permanent infrastructure so that they're not having to put resources into that. Once these organizations have this confidence to move forward, then we're already in the stages of talking and mapping out the launch of what's being called Cooperation Kalapuya, which would be a multi-stakeholder organization that would continue to work on both consumer education, workforce development, as well, and market access, as well as putting a strong arm into policy advocacy and work there. This is so we have this as phase one, supporting these institutions, and phase two, creating something, an umbrella larger for all. Thank you.
Next.
Come on, Drew, don't you think we need a crazy quilt?
So many metaphors, so many ways to describe this.
What the folks in Cottage Grove are working on is really inspiring. And so we envision a model that nests the work that Center for Rural Livelihoods is doing with their own hyper-local strategies within a larger regional network of other nonprofits, school districts, and higher learning institutions. We have U of O and Oregon State University right in our neighborhood. We are proposing a bioregional learning network for the Willamette Valley that connects these organizations into a shared ecosystem of learning, rather than each organization working in silos. This network would allow partners to share infrastructure such as admissions, administration, marketing, and curriculum development, while staying rooted in their unique places and missions. The goal is to align education with real needs on the ground, training a local workforce to meet local challenges in food systems, housing, land stewardship, and care work. By strengthening collaboration between partners, this network supports people of all ages in becoming deeply skilled, connected, and accountable to the places they live. Ultimately, the future is place-based, and we need to rethink education as one that is currently embedded in extractive systems to one that serves our landscapes. Next. So the goal for this year is to establish a network to amplify the work that we're all doing through shared marketing, software, and administration services, as well as an opportunity to collaborate on developing pilot programs that work to advance training in key sectors. Next. In summary, any amount of landscape regeneration, soil, forest, and water conservation efforts will be temporary if the extractive economy is not shifted to an economy based on the well-being of all life in our landscape. You can contact us here at our email, or you can visit each of our anchor institution websites to learn more about the work that we're doing on the ground. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And
Thank you all.
Thank you to our 4 landscape stewards here today presenting on South Willamette Valley and the extensive work they've been doing over the years. I'm going to keep the slides up, just going to have a bit of a moment of pause in between this and the next group. I'll invite the Vashon Island stewards to raise your virtual hands so that you can be spotlighted and get ready to present. And to our wonderful audience, we've had a variety of groups present over the course of the last 2 days. I hope that you're starting to see some of the patterns emerge, whether groups are very new or groups have been working for 3 years. You can see our core principles of moving at the speed of relationality, not so much of bringing new work in, but of strengthening existing work and making those connections so that rather than individual organizations trying to find funds and going for small grants here and there when they're already doing the work on the ground. As we start to form these local networks, funding can flow much more easily and cohesively into cooperative efforts. And so I'd love to, our landscape stewards from Vashon Island are up. You can see we have another group here around the Salish Sea ecoregion. Just let me know when you are ready for your first slide.
Yeah, we can jump in. Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be here speaking from Vashon Island in the southern end of the Salish Sea to share our Regenerate Vashon project here on the land of the Swiftwater people. And go to the next slide and we'll give a little overview of kind of our group that's sharing today, the initiating team. My name is Megan Stachura. My professional work is in fisheries and data science, and I do a lot of volunteer work in regenerative economics, habitat restoration, and with the Vashon Dish Library. And I'll pass it over to Sue.
Yes, I've lived in Seattle actually for most of my adult life, where I worked in a collective bookstore and studied ethnomusicology at the University of Washington. But where probably my most important work was as a native plant steward in the urban forests and parks. And I feel much gratitude for living and working in the Vashon Maury Island community for the last 11 years.
Yeah, and my name is Brandon Letzinger, and I am the executive director of the Department of Bioregion, and then also one of the co-founders and co-administrators of Regenerate Cascadia, along with Claire Atwell, and also proud to be a Vashon resident.
Great. And a little an overview of the Vashon community more generally. We are an independent and resilient island community of small businesses, artists, farms, schools, nonprofit organizations, libraries, families, and so much more. Working together, we can carry on a legacy of stewardship through a shared land ethic, small-scale organic and regenerative farms, place-based education, creative activism, and community care. And all of that kind of feeds into the Regenerate Vashon vision for what the Vashon Island community can be. And we envision a compassionate, multi-generational, mutually supportive, resilient human community and culture that's integrated into this island ecosystem, looking both at 7 generations in the future and 7 generations into the past when thinking about this. And that community would be part of an island ecosystem that supports broader bioregional health with clean water, healthy soil, old growth forests, healthy salmon returns, and resilient and biodiverse food webs. And kind of a good place to start in realizing that vision is kind of looking at the past and kind of telling this story of this place where we all live. And next slide. And kind of at the base of that is the geology and geography on which we sit. So we're actually on 2 connected islands. It's Vashon and Maury Islands that are connected by a land bridge, which together are about 40 square miles. We're in the southern end of the Salish Sea, a more rural area, but kind of nestled between a few other larger cities. Seattle is just to the northeast of us, Tacoma just to the south of us, and then Kitsap Peninsula over to the west. And this landscape was shaped by ancient glaciers and is home to rich ecosystems and cultures. About 15,000 years ago, the retreating ice carved marine channels and deposited fertile soils. And going on to the next slide, those fertile soils have supported towering conifers and clear streams for thousands of years in the past. These streams once teemed with salmon, linking the island's watershed with the broader Salish Sea food web. However, colonization and disease devastated the native communities and really transformed the landscape through logging and farming. And now, after that history, the forests are largely second growth and inhabited by many different invasive species. And there's a multitude of ecosystem stressors, from pollutions to degraded habitat to low stream flows. And Next slide. Well, kind of a part of that ecosystem is the people on the land, and we are on the land of the Swiftwater people. Vashon and Maury Islands are the traditional territory of the Puyallup tribe of Indians and the Swababs or Swiftwater people. And historically, 10 to 15,000 Native people lived on the shoreline villages, sustained by abundant salmon, shellfish, and cedar forests here. However, colonization and disease in the 19th century, like so much of this region, devastated the communities here and the landscape through logging and farming. And kind of that kind of introduced a new sort of era, kind of beginning with Japanese farmers that started arriving in the 1900s. That grew the local farming communities. But with World War II, there was also kind of changes in the Japanese farmers' influence on the island. Kind of fast forwarding a bit onto today, we now have 11,000 residents, which is remarkably similar to like what it had been historically when Native people lived here. Kind of a big difference being instead of being sustained by local resources, now we kind of import a lot of the resources that sustain us. Vashon Island is part of unincorporated King County. And there's a variety of pressures, particularly ferry dependence as an island that does not have a bridge, and also affordability. And I'll pass it on to Sue to talk a little bit more about this community ecosystem.
So we're sharing this presentation to highlight the Vashon community's more recent efforts to regenerate the island's small farms and forest habitat. It said that in 1940s and 50s, you could see from one end of the island to the other, which is what makes this land ethic shared by Aldo Leopold in 1949 so resonant. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. Our presentation honors the ongoing regenerative work of this island community and incredible networks that have formed over decades to strengthen our independent resilience and self-sufficiency. Next. Our presentation honors the, I'm sorry. But we also are acknowledging our interdependence with one another on this island and with other communities of the Salish Sea, Cascadia, and a bioregional earth. These are some of the groups that are active on the island. Next slide. One of the best examples of our independence and interdependence is the salmon recovery efforts of the Vashon Maury Island Land Trust, whose stewards have been working in cooperation with the Puyallup tribe to restore the 4 major watersheds on the island. Since restoration of our forested creeks has been more effective than attempts to restore nearby urbanized rivers, our island creeks are actually starting to provide new homes for salmon that are native to the Puyallup River. This bioregional approach to salmon recovery highlights our island's critical place in the Salish Sea ecosystem, as well as in the indigenous culture of Coast Salish people. Next. Driving around Vashon Maury Island, you'll see many of these yard signs that are pictured here on the left. This is a picture of one in my driveway. The Vashon Heritage Museum worked with the Puyallup artist Daniel Baptista and the Vashon Working Group that included the Land Trust to create the signs and to acknowledge the indigenous sovereignty, that indigenous sovereignty is the main thread in our story of place. In our more recent past, this thread has been interwoven with the Japanese American heritage for our local food system of interconnected small farms. The Land Trust purchased Matsuda Farm 10 years ago, both to honor the displaced members of the Matsuda family and their farming community during World War II, and also to explore the role that small-scale regenerative agriculture can play in ecosystem restoration. The farm has been a community site for volunteering and learning, as well as providing food for island schools. The Friends of Mukai have revitalized another Japanese-American family farm as a community center and whole island food hub. Their soon-to-be-completed barreling plant at Mukai Farm and Garden will provide processing facilities for the network of small farmers in the Vashon Island Growers Association, or VIGA. VIGA was organized by local farmers to share resources with one another. Oh, next slide. VIGA was organized by our local farmers to share resources with one another and to provide access to fresh food through the weekly farmers market and a whole island map of honor system farm stands. Their food access partnership creates VIGA bucks from individual donations, which are available to anyone on the island to use at the farmers market and farm stands. Excuse me. It's a prime example of our shared community ethic of islands taking care of other islanders. The ethic has been, next slide. The ethic has been fostered by the constraints of the Salish Sea. We're a community that has been essentially organized within our natural boundaries and through businesses like Granny's Attic, groups like Zero Waste Vashon, and various libraries for tools, dishes, musical instruments, and seeds, as well as well-read books. The community is motivated, if not always successful, to share resources with one another rather than moving them on and off island. Next. When SNAP benefits were threatened a few months ago, a call went out and a group of individual islanders got together within days, built these neighborhood pantries, modeled on many book libraries, to assure that extra contributions of food were available in each neighborhood. Next. As a small, rural, unincorporated island, connected by 2 ferries to the nearby Seattle-Tacoma metropolis, and without a city government of our own, an ecosystem of island groups has self-organized to fill needs and mediate with county, state, and U.S. governments, including the Vashon Maury Community Council, Vashon Household for Affordable Housing, and the Interfaith Council to Prevent Homelessness. But especially in case of disaster, where access to and from the island could be completely cut off, Vashon Maury Island would benefit from participating in a more extensive place-based network of mutual aid and support. Next. Other groups and organizations have helped to create a cohesive culture on the island with local storytelling of the beachcomber, Voice of Vashon on the radio, professional and community performance at Open Space and Vashon Center for the Arts, the spirit of faith-based groups that connect with one another around climate activism and social justice, and a unique arts community that visualizes cultural transformation through reverence for the natural world. Next. The Backbone Campaign is an example of a long-standing arts collective that defines our community. It's probably the keystone organization for making our local story visible and for showing how place-based artful activism can have a powerful impact on the planetary issues we care about. Next, and I'll switch to Brandon.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Sue. And I think everything that was just said so powerfully impacts why these bioregional communities on Vashon Island are so important. Just a little bit more about our team. Our team is very new. And so we started meeting about 4 or 5 months ago and to join as part of the Landscape Hub Cultivator to really see Vashon represented as part of this process. Next slide. It does date back to 2023. Vashon was one of the stops along the bioregional activation tour. And we had a wonderful gathering at the Mukai Farm and Garden where we partnered with the Design School for Regenerating Earth. And we had Joe Brewer and Penny Heipel and Stephen Morris join us for these series of presentations, really around what would it take to regenerate the Cascadia bioregion, but also what would it mean to regenerate Vashon Island and what would that look like? And then what would that self-sufficiency and resilience look like? We had a wonderful gathering also at the Grange and community conversations as well as dinners. Next slide. And then really we're able to put together not necessarily answers, but a lot of ideas and a lot of questions. And so we really wanted to lead with how would, if money was to flow, if we wanted to make decisions together, how would we come together to do that? What would governance look like? What would coordination look like? With an acknowledgement that these efforts are already happening. And so we don't want to duplicate anything. And so instead, how do we come in service to all of these projects that are already happening? To support, strengthen, visualize, and then see people supported with the idea that the work is happening, but oftentimes it's in silos. People are burning out. People are not being resourced or supported. And so how can we just better strengthen this island quilt and fabric? Next slide. And so in 2026, I think we are going to start very small. I think we want to really reinforce the work that's been happening and the work of Regenerate Vashon simply with small in-person gatherings and conversations. And so we want to convene people together around fire pits, potlucks, dinners, or maybe larger gatherings at the Land Trust building that really just help bring people together and find people who are interested in being involved, and just starting with very informal conversations. The one thing that we will be working towards, probably in May, June, or July, will be an in-person bioregional mapping process. And so we are looking for people who would like to join us, and that's where we will be starting to reach out to other organizations on the island to make sure that all these people, groups, organizations are invited as stakeholders to really start to help us discuss what would a long-term as well as short-term regeneration strategy for Vashon Maury Island look like, and then how do we start to make those decisions together, and what are the things that we need to be thinking about, and what are the layers that we need to be thinking about, and who do we need to be inviting in to be part of this conversation as we get started. Next slide. And this will all lead to very small but important 2026 kind of flow funding and micro grants. We will be kind of putting together a flow funding circle to help us have these conversations. Probably flowing out at least $3,000, so it's not a lot, but we will be fundraising and trying to raise more money. But I think something to highlight is that the decision-making process for how we allocate that money and how we do it is actually more important than the amount. This is a very early stage, and so we want to pilot, we want to test, and we want to come together to actually start to build relationships and trust with each other. And I think that's one of our core foundations. Next slide. And lastly, we would love if to find just one or two more people to help us join the Landscape Hub Cultivator. Megan, Sue, and myself have been helping hold space as part of these weekly sessions. But we would love to find one or two more people to help us hold that process, and so that local work is being visualized, supported, and connected into this more broad bioregional network. Next slide. And with that, I'll just end there. And if you want to get connected, just please feel free to reach out to Megan, Sue, or myself. You can always find our information on the Regenerate Cascadia website. So thank you so much, and look forward to talking more.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to our Vashon Island landscape stewards who are looking for a couple of more landscape stewards to join the team. We're going to take a brief pause here before I share a bit more information about our final landscape, Mount Olympus, just to check in and see if anyone would like to ask a question to the previous landscape groups that have presented, or a general question or about Regenerate Cascadia, or even to share what it is that you're starting to notice about these groups. As you can see, there are patterns coming through in their stories. There's uniqueness and diversity, and then there are shared themes as well. Anyone want to jump in for a little bit of a dialogue? Okay, so that was 7 seconds of facilitator silence. And so with that, I might just continue on with our the rest of our slides, and then we'll go into some closing dialogue.
I'll just say
Oh,
somebody
here
was
comes
asking
one.
in the chat, I
Oh,
don't know,
yes.
monitoring, but what bioregional mapping is. And some people answered it, but you might just give that some airtime.
That would be great. Claire, do you want to take that one away?
Well, sure, I'll jump in, but yeah, others too. Yeah, really making how do we make what's currently invisible visible when in our education system and also just how we've worked on the land. The stories that actually make up why we have the relationships we do have been lost. And so, for example, sometimes Indigenous place names will give you an idea of the way people lived in a place because it gives you a clue as to what that relationship is. And or the traditional food harvesting in a place, which wasn't just about food, it was about the relationship that became the encampments where people would, because the season was dictating that this is the time when the camas bulbs bloomed, that this was or the harvesting time of those foods, that it also organizes people in a way that, yeah, those camps, the initiations, the storytelling, like uprooting from where you normally live to a camp that's traditional. So it was what organized people, but it also then when we lose that, we also lose our relationship to the land. And then we take over with our way better ideas that we think they are and run roughshod over the land, which is when you start getting flooding and, you build a city in a floodplain because, it makes sense to you from that perspective, but it also means you've lost your history.
And so bioregional mapping is very much a whole system process. We know that having connection, a sense of belonging, an identity, a shared story, these are some of the things that really hold people in the work and inspire the work to unfold in healthy ways. But as Claire was saying, if you don't get a chance to be brought into a complete story, then your version of the story from your perspective may not include other people's experiences and perspectives. And so bioregional mapping is about representation. Oh, it looks like Brandon's ready to go with, did you want to jump in, Brandon?
Yeah, no, I'm going to give a 30-second, very short answer. The
Okay,
bioregional
great.
mapping is a way of basically looking at our places as defined through the people living here. It actually grew out of this area in the 1980s through indigenous communities in British Columbia that put together these amazing bioregional atlases as part of their Supreme Court cases to help assert sovereignty of their territory. These conversations are incredibly relevant today, as many of these First Nations are still in the process of fighting for their sovereignty and territory, and are actually some of the front lines against preventing this global extraction and monoculture between, say, East Coast and Asian markets. And so what's amazing is this really grew here. Then there was a UBC professor named Doug Aberley who put together this process that they piloted in the early 1990s to really help give actually a lot of the identity of the Salish Sea through these bioregional mapping processes. And this was really piloted on the Gulf Islands. And they did a process that involved something like 6,000 of their, I think, 30,000 residents at that time. And they did just dozens of bioregional mapping workshops, discussions, conversations, and put together these beautiful atlases called like Islands in the Salish Sea. And Cascadia, in a very similar way, emerged from these kind of very early processes. And so we're very excited to kind of pilot this, but then more than just the mapping, we want to bring people together to really be talking about their regeneration strategies. And so not just the different layers that we need to think about, but that are the special stories of place, but then also who is doing the work in the landscape. And so then as we're starting to talk about how we're flowing funding, how are we starting to make decisions together? And so all of that is kind of what we're going to weave in to these bioregional mapping workshops that all of our landscape groups are going to be piloting later this year, and then developing those regeneration strategies that will lead into the flow funding pilots. And again, a really important part of that is bringing stakeholders into the room to be part of the conversation and identifying who's doing that work and how we're making decisions together and starting to build that trust. Okay, I'm done.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. And so I'm going to jump. You're getting a thumbs up from a few people and some hands, all of the good things. So I'm just going to pop back to our slides to talk about Mount Olympus. We've had a question come up in the chat about whether they are presenting. Can we see my slide here? Yes. So the Mt Olympus Olympic Peninsula is very much activated and connected with Regenerate Cascadia currently. And so you've seen over the course of the last 2 days, we've got groups that have been organizing since the activation tour. We have groups that have scrambled to get ready in October and join the program. And this work takes time. So with Mount Olympus and the Olympic Peninsula, the landscape stewards there have decided we are slowing down and engaging a part of our learning and engagement funnel that these groups, in the rush to start the Landscape Hub Cultivator, didn't have the option to join. And so this is actually part of our closing in terms of ways that you can get involved in the work. Because the work is deep and it takes time, we have identified a learning and engagement funnel, a pathway in to the point where some of the more mature landscape groups are today that has been highly effective. And that starts with people joining the 6-month learning journey on bioregionalism and bioregional organizing that the Design School for Regenerating Earth runs. And from that, we're finding that people can much more easily flow into our bioregion program and then our Landscape Hub Cultivator. So what is that learning journey about? It runs annually from spring to fall equinox. So that's happening in March. And so just around the corner is an opportunity for people to jump into that. So following the 2023 activation tour, we hosted a Cascadia cohort in 2024 that went through the design school's learning journey along with a global community. What we learned from that is that it really was a powerful template for confluence around the Cascadia bioregion. And so in 2025, we hired a dedicated learning journey steward, wonderful person by the name of Andra, very active in the North Willamette Valley. And we were able to expand the Cascadia cohort experience in 2025 and resource that more strongly. So Andra, as the steward, was able to help people in landscapes who wanted to start a group to find each other and to start a new group, or to connect people in the Cascadia cohort into the existing groups that we already have. So we know that the bioregional learning journey supports Regenerate Cascadia to form into our group strategy. And so what you've heard from today are landscape groups. And our definition for a landscape group is that it's a fairly established team that meets regularly and has at least 3 designated group stewards. What we were not able to pilot in 2025, but we think is really important and will be piloting this year, is seed groups. And seed groups are small local group that have come together, they're early forming, and they're focused on that initial stage, exploration, learning, and early stage collaboration, forming, norming, storming, getting ready to hold a larger community. And so so what we want to say about Mount Olympus is that there are definitely probably numerous seed groups that will be coming outside of that region through the learning journey this year. And so if you are in the Mt Olympus Olympic Peninsula ecoregion and landscape, please consider these next steps for how to get involved. And in terms of staying connected to everyone here on the call and on yesterday's call, if you've registered, you will receive the showcase recordings from each day, as well as the slides, and even the chat will be emailed to you shortly next week. We also plan to start a Landscape Hub Cultivator specific newsletter that goes to the people that have registered for this events so that you can keep abreast of the phases, the outcomes, the discoveries, and the opportunities that are coming up during that year-long pilot, which of course is a very emergent process. And so ways to get directly involved besides receiving the information from us. In the slide decks and resources that we share, we will put together a landscapes directory on one page that shows every landscape group's contact information, including Mt Olympus Olympic Peninsula, so that if you are locally based and you'd like to connect, you've got your direct contact. We encourage people to join our Cascadia cohort in March to September this year, and you will be stewarded, and that is the best way to join our programming. And then, of course, the Regenerate Cascadia website has lots of ways to get involved, and we have a very rich online community in our Telegram. So that concludes the hundreds of slides. I might just throw to Claire and Brandon to see if anything has been missed. Any of our team, have we missed anything critical? All right, great. Yeah, something's popped up. I heard a voice.
That was amazing. It's so inspiring every time I hear the presentations. Just how what is going on the ground is animated through your voices. You really are speaking for the land, and it's wonderful to see.
And so we're going to formally close, pretty close to being on time, and we're going to keep the Zoom room open till about 1:15, just to have some more conversation, to ask more questions, to share some of the things you were noticing in the presentations. So thank you so much to everyone who's joined us today, and thank you for your interest and your support. Thank you to all of our landscape groups and our landscape stewards, whether they presented today or not. Thank you for showing up, saying yes, and being committed to the whole, not just the piece that you can see. And finally, thank you to our Regenerate Cascadia and Department of Bioregion team. Without all of you, well, we wouldn't be able to carry this work together. So thank you so much for everything that you've brought today. And we will formally close, and let's have a chat. Anyone who's keen to have a chat, we're going to stay on for 15 minutes. And I see Kathy's hand raised.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yes, I was the I was the founder and board of director and everything in Southern Oregon for the Community Skills Bank, and eventually we had 1,100 members in our skills bank, including the whole town of Shady Grove, Oregon, had joined. But it was an organization that had 22 categories of agriculture, alternative energy, recycling, etc. Then we had 8 different ways you could access a skill or offer a skill. You could be a learner 1 or learner 2, teacher or doer 1 or 2. You could have the tools or need the tools. And that was part of this inventory process. So it lasted 8.5 years, and we even got funding from after I left the organization. A grant writer got involved. U.S. Bank and McDonald's Corporation ended up giving us money because we were doing something so wild and different. But it was a period in history in the mid-'70s when the economy was experiencing a downturn, and a lot of people were flooding the Southern Oregon area. So I just wanted to share that with you. I have a really old copy of the catalog, and it doesn't have the several hundred cyber skills that have gone into reality since the early 80s, but I would recommend that as a possible small grant project somebody could supply to design a format. Because today with computers and emails, it'll be a cinch to sort of hook people up a lot easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for the reminder that we have been creatively solving our problems together for a long time. Victor.
Yes, you said the recordings will be available to us. Will they be available to the public at some point? I really want to share these with people.
Yes, I think we will create a blog post. We'll post these to the Regenerate Cascadia website. That'll be easily found in recent updates. And for the first newsletter that goes to this group, we'll probably highlight where that is on the site so that you can definitely find it. Brian.
I just want to say something, Claire. That is just to say, whatever it looks like on the front end, we're a really small, scrappy team, and we're going to get these as soon as we can, but just, patience. But I really wanted to just emphasize that. We do a lot with a little, and
And as Brandon has said, if you're familiar, if you just Google YouTube, Regenerate or Department of Bioregion, all of our videos are there, including videos that are unlisted from the Landscape Hub Cultivator and all of our monthly community calls. So you can actually get a window into the regular rhythm of the work and how this community of practice is working together. Brian.
Oh, thank you, Taya. It's a pleasure to see such regenerative community work across Cascadia. We've been doing similar work here in the Western Pacific from, I'd say, the eastern shores of Australia all the way to the Philippines. And we've pioneered an approach we call marine permaculture, which helps to regenerate kelp forests and also habitat for forage fishes such as juvenile salmon. We have submitted some proposals for Salish Sea regeneration with marine permaculture as a pilot. And we're also raising funds for America's first marine permaculture pilot, which we hope will launch in the next year or two. So we're thrilled to be able to regenerate life in the ocean as well as our soils. And the Salish Sea, of course, is an ideal place for this. And so I just wanted to reach out to connect with people. We're at climatefoundation.org. Very happy to connect on this. And we're hoping to build capacity with more and more local coastal communities that would like to lean into the regeneration on sea as well as land. So thank you so much.
That is so great to hear from you, Brian. So you can hear Brian's operating at a different place in the funnel of how we start to aggregate regenerative, locally based communities into a place where larger funding can flow. So wonderful to have you on the call, and I'm sure you found this exciting to see Salish Sea represented.
We call the ocean and marine regeneration as the second lung of ocean Mother Earth, and it is half the photosynthesis on the planet, and yet she needs our help more than ever. That said, what we found in the Western Pacific is if we can give ocean Mother Earth half a chance, she'll rebound exponentially. And we've seen thousands of sardines, hundreds of tuna, dozens of dolphins, and some whale sharks. So Mother Nature she's voting with her fins, and she's really confirming that we can regenerate life in the ocean. So I look forward to engaging with many of you on that. And thank you, Claire, for your message.
And so a big goal of the Landscape Hub Cultivator, we wanted to launch first by introducing our landscape stewards in the regions that are active, but ultimately we want to be convening multi-stakeholder forums where we have on-ground regenerators and impact investors and people involved in the financial system and green climate solutions, all on these calls together, having rich dialogue, so that we can start to connect broader areas of the economic system that are wanting to support this work and share the learning. Impact investors, philanthropists, they have particular needs, challenges, risks that they need to mitigate. Regenerators on ground know what needs to happen and how that needs to not be corrupted by some of the reporting processes that grants and impact investing require. So we see that these two groups really do need to be in conversation and learning from each other so that we can co-create solutions that meet both needs in that regard.
And we find that those challenges in Australia as well. We're working from Noosa to Narara with regenerative communities and finding that connection between the regenerators on the ground and those philanthropists and others interested in helping. I think it's making that connection well is key. And we're really working to regenerate 1,000 regenerative communities that are going to have, ultimately, we're hoping for abundance of energy, labor, and food.
Wonderful. Anyone else want to ask a question or share a comment or a reflection on what they've taken from the last day or two?
Well, I was going to step in and just say, just on the heels of what Brian just shared, is that a part of the people that are engaged in the work in the land is the whole emphasis on relationship and navigating right relationship. It's not something we can do in abstraction. And that just feels like such a missing part of the conversation. And it's why we've put such a huge emphasis on this stage of the work, because it's often just skipped over to get to the things that we think that's what we have to do. But if we skip this is the work, the relationship building.
And so we didn't talk a lot about bioregional finance today because the focus needs to start with land, history of land, landscape and landscape communities. But really, the purpose of this work, bioregional finance, is its own field that's evolving. We affectionately call it BioFi, and there are all sorts of visions for bioregionally based funds, finance facilitating, what is it called, bioregional finance facilities, etc. But as we all know, as soon as money enters the story, it can really activate our nervous systems quite quickly. When we don't have enough, when we are falling short before a bill gets paid, when we're competing for a grant with a group that we actually know we're aligned with, this puts a lot of stress on us, yeah? And it causes things to, in some ways, fall apart or to be co-opted. And so we want to make sure, we think that bioregional finance, to be successful, has to have such a strong grounding in our identity, our relationships, the trust that we've built, our ability to work through healthy conflict, to come back to belonging after rupture, as because we stay on the leading edge of what we're doing. And we think that is what is going to safeguard and allow bioregional finance to be like water and sunlight, as opposed to something that gets in the way of our naturalness and can skew things. I see lots of hands have come up. So Mike, over to you.
I don't know whether there's more than one mic here, but anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, you're the one with your hand up.
Oh, there's lots of mics, you know. And all I wanted to say is that I was born in Northern England, sorry, was local. And there's a little town there, and they have this incredible catchphrase, which is so powerful. And it's simple. It's if you eat, you're in. You know, and that's one thing. Somebody, I think it was Claire Atwell that mentioned it earlier. We are. Somebody asked me a little while ago, what do you think is our main for this area? What's our main? This South Willamette Valley, sorry. Where do you think our main food supply comes from? And I thought for a few minutes, and I said, oh, it's a 5 freeway, and that is ridiculous, you know, because we have these fertile lands. I know Brian at Inspiration Farms doing a lot with seeds and other people. But we really need to, we need to pay attention. We need to grow our own food, not depend on stuff coming from hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. And thanks to everybody for everything. Oh, we do have a massive seed collection to help with that too. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you, Mike. Over to you, Steve, of Vashon Island.
Yeah, thanks very much for having this. And I learned a lot. And the Project Heron that Jack talked about seems like it should be like a really fantastic way to really link all these existing programs that are going on throughout Cascadia together, so everyone's aware of it. And on Vashon alone, we've got, I don't know how many dozens of programs that are really contributing to this whole regenerative process. And the more we can celebrate them and champion them, I think the better. So I don't know if that is a plan for the whole project or for just an individual region, but I think it should be expanded to the whole project. And the other question I had, I heard climate mentioned a couple times, but how much does the climate crisis play a role in this whole overall project?
And landscape stewards on the call, please feel free to jump in and answer, and also our team members. Anyone can respond.
Yes, Steve, I'd love to touch base on like the vision that I was having. This is my personal development project, and can you turn off the audio there?
You're muted, Shapit?
There we go. Sorry about that. We're having a bit of audio here. So the Project Heron was started as just something that I wanted to learn Rust. And so I created a little project and was learning Rust, and then started building a back end for tracking the events, the people who were signing up for events. So if we needed a ticketing system, I was building those sorts of functions as I needed them. So I would love to interact with people and extend it and build it into something that can support the community. I just need other builders that want to build with me, not somebody I can assign a task to, but somebody who can envision what we want.
About 5 years ago on the island, we did the whole Vashon project, which was to try to recreate the whole Earth catalog for the island. And we had over 100 different examples of things that people are doing on the island to contribute to solving the climate crisis. And so I think that type of model, I think would really pay off well to apply something like that to the Cascadia scale, to really link everything together so everything is sort of visible.
Steve, that is the reason I'm with the Regenerate Cascadia team. I'm a climate change solutions prototyper, and I've worked in centralized solutions, Paris Agreement, nationally determined contributions, carbon markets, and we need change there, and yet it is too slow, in my opinion, to meet the immediate needs of species, of ecosystems, and of human beings. So this is a template, not a blueprint. This is something that can be used for community economic development, for developing local food systems, disaster resilience, housing, keeping money circulating within a community so that we're developing our adaptive resilience if we do indeed reach a point where we can only work within a local scale. So right. I definitely think it's a very strong solution to climate change and one very worth investing in.
Just a short note on that, Taya, and that is that I think it not only is something we may be reduced to, and that is local climate adaptation, but it's also the front lines of progress, I believe. We're going to need to address all three legs of the climate triad, and that is emissions to zero, 2,400 gigatons of carbon removal, and local and regional climate repair. And what does that look like from a nature-inspired context? Well, it turns out those beautiful marine clouds that we have across the Pacific Northwest and even here in Queensland today represent the way Ocean Mother Earth cools herself. I mean, when you have more clouds, you reflect sunlight, you stay much cooler. And we're finding that both the combination of sea spray and biogenic aerosols that come from our forests on land and in the sea have a profound effect on the rebrightening of our marine clouds. We have a group called rebrighten.org, and this is a great way that communities connect with local climate and actually can help lead the way on local and regional transparent climate repair. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. I'm in Queensland too. Skeeter, over to you from Mt Olympus.
Well, I'm just wanting to invite everybody to our Global Earth Repair Convergence in Port Townsend, and I'd really like to talk to you about that. Brandon says he's coming. Brian Von Herzen, who you just heard from, is part of it. And if we're going to heal the globe or global earth repair, you have to do it locally. You can't do it globally. So it's local and bioregional is real important for our event. And I just want to invite Brandon and a few other people here to come and have a bioregional panel at our event. So there's an invitation to come in person and really promote bioregionalism to our whole group. And I put that in the text or in the chat there, but pretty easy to find us. Global Earth Repair. We're the only, I don't think there's only one other place in the world using the term, and that's in Australia, by the way. But Global Earth Repair Foundation or Convergence. And I just love bioregionalism. I love the Skagit. I love Whatcom. And I would say I love you all. Let's all stick together. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Skeeter. We should also plug for everyone, let's get together face-to-face in Port Townsend in the historic Fort Worden in September as we revitalize the Bioregional Congress template from many decades ago and put on Turtle Island Bioregional Congress in September. So we'll also include that information in our newsletter. David, over to you.
Okay, quick. I think you said September. Global Earth Repair Convergence is May 7th to 11th. But the Turtle Island Bioregional Congress is in September. So
yes.
May for us.
Yes,
and the talks are going to be in Eugene, I believe, down in Oregon, isn't it?
The Turtle Island Bioregional Congress is going to be outside of Portland, I hear, and near just south of St. Helens. And I'm planning on being there for that. Yes, sirree.
Oh, wonderful. David, you've had your hand up for a while, and then we'll go to Asha from Mt Olympus. Well, we can't hear you, David. I'm not sure why. You're not muted. Maybe unplug that headset and go direct with your laptop audio. No, okay, so we'll go to Asha, and David, if you can get your sound going, we'll come back to you.
I'm going to put it in the chat. I also am in Mount Olympus area, so I've been so grateful to be a part of this. Thank you all for being here. And yeah, I look forward to being in community with you all. Some of the things I do are with youth, and I'm developing a program for entrepreneurship related to circular economy in this local region. And so there's been some conversation around how to bring in youth to regenerative initiatives. So that would be something that I would love to discuss across these different groups, how we could talk about this going forward. Thank you so much for everyone's involvement. I really appreciated the presentations, and blessings to you all.
And Asha will most probably be one of the people, landscape stewards, helping us to pilot our seed group model in 2026 as we move through the learning journey. So please do connect with Asha if you're in that area. So David Haskell, how did you go with your audio? Did you get there in the end? Oh, maybe not. Oh, I can see you, but we just can't hear you, unfortunately. So, you are welcome to type your question in the chat if it was a question, but I've got a feeling it was probably more of a contribution. So we are 1:15. Does anyone else want to share? Oh, Claire, I see your hand going up.
I was just going to respond to the climate change question as well. Just a slightly different take on that is just that the way we have been working through Regenerate Cascadia and a lot of our approaches, a lot of energy can go into fighting the existing system, and climate change is really symptoms of a much larger problem. And so focusing on the work that we can do while taking in what's going on and working with the like earth system science, climate science that's there, but doing what we can on the ground. When you put your energy into building the infrastructure that does not yet exist, it starts to feel really powerful because it's so frustrating to sort of know that something better, more needed to be there. And so this is what we're doing. This is the work. And yeah. So I just wanted to give that slightly different. It's not about ignoring climate science and climate change and what's happening there. It's definitely taking it into consideration. But let's do what's possible. And not possible, but with a North Star of we want to regenerate essentially the Earth. And as we regenerate each of our home places, they connect to the continental scale, to the planetary scale. We just share with each other.
And this is what we love, local subsidiarity, local sovereignty, starting local. That's all anyone can do, honestly. And that's how we can really hold right relationship. But that provides a template that we can keep ratcheting up to larger and larger levels of collaboration while still maintaining those core principles. So in many ways, we're exploring federation, which means that we join together and create one identity to achieve larger things than we can achieve on our own, but we do not sacrifice our own local identity and stories in that process. So thank you so much. We basically have a new newsletter that's emerged from these last 2 days of showcasing. This is a particular group of people that have connected with us at the beginning of our Landscape Hub Cultivator. We would like to continue to be in communication with you because the Hub Cultivator is going to be producing some really interesting moments and events and opportunities to gather and brainstorm together. So when you receive the email, if you would like to opt out, of course you can. But we would like to stay in touch with this larger community of practice that we've developed over the next 2 days. So I think we shall bring ourselves to a close, and I really look forward to connecting with many of you over the course of 2026 in person, potentially even. Thank you so much. Take care and keep doing the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
It was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Whatcomers. Awesome job.
Good to see you, Bruce.
Yeah.
And good to see you, Jeff.
Good job, everybody, actually.
Nice to see Claire.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.